Welcome to the Parenting with Impact podcast with your hosts Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster, co-creators of ImpactParents.com, an online community, award-winning blog, and service organization helping parents all over the world to raise complex kids become capable, independent adults.
Hi everyone, Elaine and Diane here, and we know that you want your complex kids to grow up to be happy and independent, and yet you're not always sure how or when to help with that.
In this podcast, we'll encourage you to collaborate with all kinds of complex kids and support them in navigating life and learning.
And we'll interview leading experts from around the world, as well as parents in our own community, talking about how training for parents actually helps these complex kids.
We'll talk about the issues we hear parents struggling with all the time and how a coach approach can support and empower your amazing young people.
We won't tell you what to do. We're going to help you figure out how. So let's move on to the next conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. We are going to have a shift gears a little bit today. Our guest is Alyson Bourque, and we are going to be talking about talking to kids. So her expertise, you can read more in the show notes, but she is the author of the Alycat series of books for children, and she supports us and how do we talk to our kids about all kinds of complex emotions and friendships and trying new things and all kinds of stuff, navigating fear. Alyson, why don't you start by telling us, so you have an interesting background. You've been a lawyer and a teacher, and what got you into writing books for children?
So I've always loved to write. When I was little, I used to write poetry, and in class, I'd finish my work and just start writing. So I always knew I liked that creative side. I have a background in elementary education, and I taught school for a year, but always knew I wanted to be an attorney. So I taught school for a year to raise enough money to go to law school, and then went off to law school. I practiced law for almost 8 years as assistant attorney general, representing the state and in different defense trials. And doing that, I loved it because it was a lot of writing. It was trial briefs, it was research and helping people and navigating problem solving. And so I really loved it, but I just kept going back to that notion of wanting to help children. I had 2 young children at the time, and I decided I wanted to take some time off of practicing law and spend that time with them in those young ages. They were 4 and 6. And so one night I was putting them to bed along with my husband, and they wanted to read books that we had already read 1,000 times. And they said, can we buy more books and new books? And we had so many books. And I was trying to be frugal, and I was just trying to be mindful, and said, why don't I just write you a story and y'all go to bed and tomorrow I'll read it. And so when I said that, they just jumped up and down. They were so excited for me that I was excited for myself. And
yeah.
Long story short, I put them to bed and went downstairs and wrote what is now the first Alycat book.
That's awesome. What a great story.
It was so fun. And so, of course, it didn't take off from that day. I had to end up querying agents and publishers, and had over 200 rejection letters, but kept trying. And I think because my children believed in me and believed in this goal, I believed in myself. It's like the tables were turned.
They're like your cheerleader. That's beautiful.
Well, and that's such a beautiful theme in our community with parents of complex kids, is that our kids need us to believe in them and to see what's possible for them, sometimes when they can't see it for themselves. And so what a beautiful flip that really your kids were holding this belief in you in a way that had you wanted to step into that, right?
Right. Because I didn't know that. I knew I loved to write. I didn't think I was any good at it, but I figured if they liked my stories, then maybe others would. And I read it to them the next night, and they loved it. They had all these wild endings to help with the story, and it grew from there.
So many different directions we could go. What just came up as you were saying that, Alyson, is that it's that collaboration. There's this thread of collaboration that you had because your kids were your cheerleader, and then they had great ideas for the ending. What were some of the things you did to really foster and connect with your kids as you're going through this process?
So I actually would remember those things that really affected them. And so at the ages of 4, 6, 8, they get really involved in those things, those fears of not being invited to a birthday party or fears of feeling left out and not being able to measure up. And so when we would have those problems, because it's inevitable for children to come home with those issues, I remembered that. And then I said, okay, how should us as humans navigate these problems? Because as a mom, I want to fight for my child, but that's not always the best way. Sometimes we have to be patient and work through and help them work through it. So all the stories are very similar to some of the things that they went through and what I went through as a child, but not getting so mama bear about solutions, actually working with them to navigate and find resources to help themselves and pull out of whatever it is that is affecting them.
Beautiful. So the real emphasis that I'm hearing is that it's not just telling kids, how do you do this, but it's working with kids to resource themselves, to see what's important to them and to come up with their own problem solving and their own solutions.
Absolutely. So all of the books and the themes in the books are very subtle. It doesn't give a clear directive of here's how you solve being left out. There's actually ways by creativity or the help of a friend, doing something that you know you've done before and having confidence in that to help solve these problems, because kids don't want to be lectured to. They want to be a part of the solution.
Well, and what's coming up for me as you say that is so often as parents, we get tripped up by our kids being uncomfortable, right? It's just, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid to feel this way. I felt left out when I was in high school or whatever it was. And it's, we don't want our kids to repeat the patterns. And a lot of times what we do is like we flip the switch and it's, oh, you're not, don't worry about that, or you'll be fine. Or it's just, we almost reverse the emotionality and discount it. And we don't take the opportunity to really help our kids figure out, how do I honor what I'm feeling and solve the problem at hand, which is a combination of the two. Does that resonate?
Yes. And I found that when my kids were younger, I would try to cushion their falls, physically and emotionally. And then I realized that when it came to bigger issues, because little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems, they're driving and they're doing big kid things, I wanted them to be resilient. And I thought about all the times where I didn't let them feel certain failures. That way they can work through it and have that confidence to say, I've gotten through this. Now I can get through this. I'm learning, as my kids are learning, that we have to be their cheerleader. We have to give them resources and tools and let them develop that resilience and perseverance.
Yeah, it's so powerful. How has that shifted for you? And how is that shifting in your stories as your kids have gotten older?
It's shifting because I do see the tactics that I tried to emphasize becoming more apparent. And so that's with consistency. So as a parent, I will say, okay, here's what we do. Let's list our pros and cons for a given situation. And I learned that by being consistent with my kids and then being consistent in the books of here's how she problem solves, creativity, friendship, counting to 10, deep breathing. I learned that's what they hold on to when times get tough. It's almost like muscle memory, but it's just with your brain and trying to know that you can accomplish it. So as I'm getting to book 7, 8, 9, I'm being consistent with some of those problem solving skills, although they're all handled differently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what I'm curious about is you've got 2 kids. They're different than you. They're different than each other. It's what are the tools in your toolbox to accommodate the fact that this one might be a little bit different than that one, or they might both be a little bit different than you in terms of how they approach things?
Yeah, so my kids are absolutely different. My daughter is very outspoken. She's bold. She's confident. My son is very serious and he is not as vocal as my daughter. We were just talking about grades last night because it's almost report card time. And my husband and I would sit down and for my daughter, we say, okay, get a pencil and paper. And here's how you take some notes of some reminders, because she goes really fast. And that's great in most, circumstances. But She goes so fast that she doesn't have something concrete to refer back to. So we have to shift how they absorb some of the things that we say. And then with my son, because he doesn't communicate as much as my daughter, we are more visual with him. So we show him the grades on the computer, and he'll put his notes on his phones, on his notes. We've had to adapt to their learning styles because it doesn't work with every kid doing the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your favorite topic that you've addressed in your books that you feel like, I'm so glad I did this because I feel like this has had the greatest impact?
So my favorite topic is the topic of feeling left out, because kids and adults will feel left out at any age. And I just remember some of those memories of elementary school for me that I felt fear, anxious, were times where at recess I was left out, or at a birthday party where maybe I wasn't invited to. And so I feel that by using books as tools to dig deep and create our own happiness is something that I wish I would have learned at a younger age. And I'm teaching my kids now. The first book had to do with my kids they have a milk protein allergy. And so for dessert day, they couldn't have ice cream, and everyone had ice cream and they were left out. And so instead of calling the school and getting mad, I just said, okay, well, tomorrow is show and tell. So let's create a dessert that everyone can eat together. And that way you can be a part of a dessert day. It doesn't have to be Thursday. And you get to experience that. Let's create our own happiness and have more dessert. That's the great thing. And those are different ways to be able to dig deep and create our own happiness.
I love that notion, create our own happiness. We need to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, it's Elaine. And if you like this podcast, you'll love our coach approach. Whether you're a parent looking for support or a professional supporting families, we invite you to download a free guide with 12 key coaching tools at impactparents.com/gift. You can begin using a coach approach to help kids become more independent or improve all of your conversations at work and at home. That's impactparents.com/gift. Welcome back, everybody. Our guest is Alysson Bourque, and she is the author of the Alycat series for children. And what's the average age of the groups of the kids that your books are for?
It's geared towards ages 3 to 8. And I've found that even 9, 10-year-olds still love reading picture books. Even adults still love reading picture books. So,
well, and it sounds like the messaging in it is going to be applicable regardless. I'm curious what your kids are now teens. Like, what do you hear them say and remember through the development and the stories and everything else from the beginning?
So they've noticed that the themes have grown up a little bit. So the latest book was Alycat and the Sunday Scaries. And my kids as teenagers, it's hard to get them out of bed for Monday morning, and they're worried about a test. And so the whole book of Sunday Scaries is based on situations where Alycat and her friends have scenarios where they have to rely on each other and dig deep and be confident to get through those fears. And they work together. And so they say, oh, Mama, I see that. I see how you did that because I didn't want to wake up that day and I had a test. And so they hope that young readers can feel that it's going to be okay. Once you get yourself out there and go, things are a lot better than what you think they're going to be.
Yeah, I love that your kids see themselves and see their stories and see it as a possibility to help others. It's a beautiful thing. So in our community, we have parents of complex kids, right? We started off talking about this. You've got some background as an educator. In our realm, our kids don't always process information like you're referencing in the same way as many of their peers. They're more likely to experience rejection and redirection and fears, rational or irrational fears. And so it's really important for parents to work with them to help them navigate these emotions. if you pull out of the stories, like what's some of the advice you have for parents about supporting kids who are struggling with managing their emotions?
I always, when I go to an author visit and I might see a child who might be having trouble managing emotions, I always try to redirect or be very, very careful to make sure that they're comfortable. It's all about comfort. And there's different levels of comfort for every different child. And if I see a child that is frustrated during my author visit, there's a reason why they're frustrated. It might be because they can't see the board. It might be because they're frustrated in a large group. So sometimes I have time to go and talk with the individual kids, which is my favorite part of an author visit, because I'll ask them questions like, do you like to read? Do you like to write? And if they're upset or crying or I can tell they're not happy, sometimes I just ask them, what would make you happy right now? And if they tell me if I could be a part of this author event, then I'll have them be my helper. And I know you can't do that with every child, but I do feel like there are circumstances where we can provide a little bit of light for these children who might be struggling, because we all have days where we struggle.
Yeah. What's beautiful, I love what you're saying. We often talk about in our community that a behavior is a symptom. And a behavior is a symptom that there's something else going on. And what you're speaking to is being able to go to that child and say, okay, what's going on underneath this? Because it's not judging them for the behavior. It's presuming that there's an explanation for the behavior and getting curious about understanding it.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you just talk to them and ask them without scolding them, you might find out that it could be an easy fix. Maybe they couldn't see the board whenever we're reading, or maybe somebody is getting in their space. And if we're understanding, then we can help them. And that's our job, is to help them with the different problems that might arise.
And what you're describing is something we teach all the time, which is you're not just focused on the situation at hand. There's a life skill underneath it, right? It's this sort of the life skill of being able to solve a problem and ask for help, or be able to navigate disappointment, or be able to handle feeling left out, or whatever it is. You'd started us off with the challenges that these kids face are the same as often we face even as adults. And so we're helping them navigate something that they're going to have to navigate for the rest of their lives, theoretically.
Right. In the recent book, Sunday Scaries, Spotty, Alycat's best friend, is stuck in a tree. And the whole group of friends comes across Spotty up in the tree, and he's scared he can't get down. But he's done this before. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be fearful if he does it again. Just a different day. So they band together and they tell them that they support him. And they're not saying, we support you. They're just saying, we can do it. And they ask him to come down step by step. Keep your eyes forward, your ears on us. They're counting backwards from 10, 9, 8. And another one says, you've done it before, you can do this again. And so they're supportive. And so those are the tools that I'm teaching in a very just broad way, instead of saying, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then they come across Eleanor, who has a lemonade stand, and she's upset. And they're like, why are you upset? And she said, because I'm too nervous to talk to the kittens passing by. And so they're like, well, we can help you. So they pick up the signs and they're calling out for lemonade, and they work together. And you just don't know what others might be going through. And 1 minute you might feel confident to go set up a lemonade stand. And then once you get in a situation, your nerves can get nervous. And so it's just about relying on your friends and taking those deep breaths and steps to conquer any situation that you might come across.
Love that. Love.
So we need to start wrapping up. Alysson, if people wanted to connect with you or find your books, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So they can head over to my website, alycatseries.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at the Alycat series, or they're free to contact me on my website and email me there.
Excellent. And we'll put all of this in the show notes for everybody. And we've also got on our reading carousel on our website, we have a lot of parenting books and inspirational books. And then we do have a section for children's books. So we'll make sure to put it there as well.
Awesome.
So that people can find it. And we'll put that link in. Beautiful.
Thank you so much. It's awesome.
So as we wrap up, is there anything we haven't covered that you want to make sure we talk about? Is there anything you want to bring back into the conversation from last time or from earlier in the conversation?
To highlight.
Sure. So I think it's important for parents to teach their children to be brave and to notice the small things in life. And that's my goal with the series, is to help parents and children to find that courage within and to know that being brave is actually doing the things that make you fearful despite being scared. So being brave and then noticing the small victories and the small stuff. And starting from that point can help a lot of things. And I just hope that my books can help readers, librarians, teachers discover those basic tools that might help brighten their day.
I love that. I used to say to my kids, feel the fear and do it anyway. That was a mantra in our house.
I love it.
And there was another one that was just, it only takes 20 seconds of bravery. Because we so get caught up in our heads around what we're afraid is going to happen, which is often not connected. Once you start, it's actually often easier. So beautiful. So Alysson, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, for the beautiful stories that you're bringing to the world. I love the journey that you've been on. And so we appreciate you sharing it with our community. Diane, what am I missing? What's left? Oh, do you have a favorite motto or quote that you want to share with our community?
Oh, yes. So I always write in my books, be brave and notice the small things.
Be brave and notice the small things. Beautiful.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Alysson. And as we wrap, those of you who are listening, take a minute and capture any insight you've had from our conversation today with Alysson. What gem do you want to take back with you into your parenting or into your day?
And as always, Alysson, thank you for being here. And for those of you listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you're doing for yourself, for your kids, bringing consciousness and intention to the way that you're parenting every day. At the end of the day, that's what makes a difference for our kids. So thanks for your engagement. We'll talk to you on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For the essentials of Elaine and Diane's coach approach to parenting, download a free tip sheet at impactparents.com/podcast.
Behavior therapy training for parents is actually recommended as a first-line treatment for complex kids. For information about Sanity School, our training program for parents or teachers, which has helped thousands of families around the globe, visit impactparents.com/Sanity School.